Robert, we are experimenting with a new technology here, a new monitor. Can you hear me okay? Everybody can hear me okay? Oh, all right, like this. Okay, is that better? Is that better, Mark? Okay.
Not as clear as it has been the past few days, though, Sensei.
Ah, okay, okay.
It still sounds a little distant, a little.
How's that? Is that good? We'll get it tested. Oh, that's good now. Oh, yeah, that's really good now. Shikan did his magic with the thing, and we're good. All right. So. Well, it's been quite an intense session so far. Intense and good. Really, really good. So, good morning, Bodhisattvas, compassionate warriors of non-aggression. I've been reading Pema Chodron's book, The Places That Scare You, written in 2001, published in 2001. Really excellent, still timely for us 20 years later. A guide to fearlessness in difficult times. And we all know this time is quite unique in our history. The pandemic certainly scared a lot of us, so much so to be safe, we had to really stay indoors, wear masks, and the term social distancing. I was talking with our participant from Durham, North Carolina. This is Kimberly Blackshear, who works at Duke University. Awesome. And it's true, they started calling it social distancing when really it was physical distancing. So, just that idea of social distancing, I think, raised some fears as well, because we're all very social beings, very social beings. And the Sangha for us, our community, is very important. And we learned, yes, that we can be social on Zoom as well, which is exciting, something we really needed to learn, I think. So, Pema Chodron has this beautiful quote by the Buddha: "Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is an ancient and eternal law." Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is an ancient and eternal law. So it just made me think, because I know in our culture we have a big thing about perfection, kind of doing things right all the time. And when we don't measure up to our own, to our ideals, we really denigrate ourselves. We really are hard on ourselves. Now, some people might say that's tough love, but is it really? It could be, but when you are constantly denigrating yourself, constantly, you're your worst critic. Is that tough love? So hatred never ceases by hatred. Some people say that there's a lot of self-hate in our communities, in our lives, in my life. I mean, I can speak for me, right? I've got to say, I have to thank this practice and my Buddhist path to helping me to overcome not being good enough. So, but by love alone is healed. Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. So, how does that apply to our talking to ourselves, our constant chatter in our head? How does that apply? Can we really be on the spot and notice, is it with hatred or with love that we are talking to ourselves? Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is an ancient and eternal law. So bodhicitta is a huge practice, or it's not a practice. Bodhicitta means, citta means heart, mind, or attitude. Bodhi means awake, enlightened, or completely open. So bodhicitta means, right, completely awakened heart, mind, which sesshin means to touch the heart, mind. That soft, incredibly soft and tender parts of us. And Pema Chodron said that soft spot is as vulnerable and as tender as an open wound. Our soft and tender hearts. And without realizing it, right, we want to shield this heart from pain without realizing it. And so what we do is we completely barricade it with walls. Just because of this deep fear of being hurt. And Pema says, these walls are further fortified by emotions of all kinds: anger, craving, indifference, jealousy and envy, arrogance and pride. But fortunately, she says, this soft spot, this innate ability to love and care about things is like a crack in these walls that we construct. So, with practice, we have to find that crack, find that opening. And can we learn to seize that vulnerable moment? Love, gratitude, loneliness, embarrassment, inadequacy, to awaken bodhicitta. This awakened mind heart. Everybody has bodhicitta. That's the good news. Everybody has it. And we are never separate from waking up. It's like the great open sky above us. No matter if there's clouds or whatever, there's the sky. That's like bodhicitta. So a couple days ago, I talked about Rilke's beautiful quote, "Our deepest fears are like dragons guarding our deepest treasure." And so fear is up for us, you know, this is what we're talking about here. What is our deepest fears? Roshi talked about it yesterday, his beautiful talk on death, the mindfulness of death. Our deepest fears. Anybody else have any other thoughts? What are your deepest fears? Just unmute yourself then. Yeah, Robert.
I don't feel like I have a really strong fear of death, but I have fear of dying, of discomfort and pain. I mean, we don't know what death is. It's hard to be really, for me to be really afraid of something we don't know. But that's more where most of my fears come from, is suffering.
Mm-hmm. Fear of the unknown, right? We just don't know. Fear of the unknown. I mean, there's all kinds of fears, but your deepest fear, what is that, right? What is that? Maybe it's fear of the unknown. Yes, Barb.
I think my deepest fear would be to move toward dying without having really lived in the absence of habit energies and distorted thinking. Long path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not to appreciate your life really fully because of habitual patterns. Sure. Yes, Kimberly.
Mine would be losing one of my children. I don't know how I could come back from that. Like, they are my world. You know, me losing my life, you know, the impact is really on them, right? But losing one of them, I think that is by far my biggest fear.
What do you think is your deepest treasure that the dragons are guarding? That, you know, it's a jewel, right? The dragons are guarding some jewel. That's what they do. What could be your deepest treasure? It's a hard question, isn't it? What could be the deepest treasure that our deepest fears are guarding against or guarding for? What is the preposition there? Right, our guarding. What is our deepest treasure? Then why
Life.
are we guarding it?
Life, existence,
I'm sorry, what?
life, existence,
Life
being
existence
here,
is your greatest treasure.
being with others, right?
I was going to say the deepest fear is lack of connection, and by that I sort of meant loneliness. And so I think it's kind of the opposite is the greatest treasure, which kind of is similar to what I think Robert was saying, which is that the connection.
Connection with others is your deepest treasure. Your connection with your loved ones. That's your deepest treasure. Yeah. Kimberly?
When I think about, treasure, I think what is the best thing I could give someone? And my thought was unconditional love, like absolute 100% unconditional love.
That's your deepest treasure, which is related to basic goodness, right? This basic sanity, this basic goodness that we have. So that's what you're guarding with your deepest fear. So why would you want to guard that, right?
Right.
It's kind of a koan. This is what we in Zen, we call a koan. We have to kind of chew on it for a while we're sitting. So basic sanity, Trungpa defines it as an unencumbered openness characterized by the absence of hope and fear. An unencumbered openness characterized by an absence of hope and fear. A wonderful place to be, right? Not to have hopes or fears. Seems to me no suffering there. Yeah. And our connection to people. So one reason we train is to realize our deep interconnectedness with everyone and everything, including trees and wild beings in the forest and in the sea, and beautiful mountains and lakes. So this compassionate warrior, I like that image. That's Pema brings in the word compassionate warrior, which makes it more clear, right? Because the word warrior already seems to imply somebody who slashes with samurai swords. And in fact, I remember one of my earliest memories is my parents used to love to go to samurai movies, right? And so they would take me, I was their firstborn, so they would take me, but I would have nightmares after, I don't know, I was really young. I remember getting up one time, it was dark, and I saw the lampshade, and that looks like, the samurai head, and I was screaming. I was maybe 5, I don't know how old I was like screaming. My father runs in, turns on the light, and I see it's a lamp. And I'm like, okay. So it's like so interesting, right? Our projections of reality, and then the light turning on and this being awake and seeing what really is. And then it's like, okay, all right. Now I really like samurai movies. Oh my God, all that killing and everything, it's like, okay, what's up with that? I don't know. But anyway, just keep, anyway. And authentic fearlessness, according to Trungpa, it arises from connecting to our basic goodness. And by goodness here, he says, it simply means being yourself. We can relax a little bit now. We can just be ourselves. Yes, me included right now. And really, can that possibly be true, to be yourself? is actually being in touch with your basic goodness. All right, come on, let's think about this now. Can that possibly be true? I don't know, we'll have to test it out, right? That's what Trungpa says, but remember, we gotta really test out stuff here. We can't just take it just because somebody told us about it, right? We gotta test it out ourselves. Make sure it works for us. So authentic fearlessness comes from connecting to your basic goodness. And by goodness, here we simply mean being yourself. I know it's hard to believe after we've denigrated ourselves all these years, all these months, and all these minutes, but it is true. You better look at that. I think that's something to look at, that thought that you have habitually been using against yourself. Something to look at. So Warriors is about facing difficult things, not sweeping them under the carpet. But we're going to get rid of our carpet here in the center. It is so dirty. I think there's a lot of things been swept under it, walked on it, whatever. Anyway, just kind of kidding here. Trungpa Rinpoche says this as well, which I love. Live your life as an experiment. I love that because I was a biology major, right? So I know all about experiments. Right? You really have, you set up a hypothesis and you got to really be objective about it. You got to try not to have all your biases because you have to see what really is. So that's the same thing about how we live our lives. We got to be objective about it. We got to get rid of some fixed ideas we have about ourselves. And that is the very practice of not knowing, practicing not knowing. The Zen peacemaker, the first tenet, letting go of fixed ideas about ourselves and the world. Live your life as an experiment. So you're being aware. This practice of mindfulness is very much about being aware of what you're doing, what you're thinking. Is it true? Starting to be curious about what we're doing here. Is it true, really? Because remembering that thoughts are not so solid if you really look at it. Not so solid. And by now, if you've been really, like some of us have been coming full time to Sesshin, and what happens is the Samadhi starts to build. Samadhi, what is that? Samadhi is one of the tools of bravery, by the way. It's a kind of concentration that happens, right, when you're really practicing, and the self kind of drops away. It drops away. It's not as big as it usually is with this beautiful practice. The self that can, that the ego I'm equating with self, can really kind of do a number on us if we're not careful. And because it thinks it is it, it is it. But really, the whole teaching of no self in Buddhism is that this self we've created is really a fiction, right? There is no separate self. We are totally interconnected with everything. Yes, we have a physical body, But look, don't let that think that you are a separate individual. We're actually much larger than that. Akin Roshi calls Samadhi the realm of absorption. And Suzuki Roshi says, when you're in Samadhi, you're like a swinging door. Nothing comes in, nothing goes out. So it's a very unifying experience of body and mind that develops in a long session. It's a real letting go. Ironically, it's a feeling of solidity, even though the solid self has gone out of your experience. So we talked a little bit about embodiment a couple of days ago as well. So there's, when you're becoming aware of bodhicitta, right? There's this sense of warmth and wholesomeness, and it feels good, basically. So that feeling allows you to open and empathize with others. And you don't really know where it comes from, and you can't hang on to it. You can't possess it, because if you try to do that, it will leave. So Samadhi is one of the tools of warriorship. Another one is, development of Shila. It's the second practice of a bodhisattva, and that is discipline or ethics or morality. This is a tool of bravery. Never neglect your discipline. And right, a complete absence of laziness. Oh no. I'm just saying that because, sometimes it's good to be lazy. I think so. So, right, even though what you're seeing, hearing, feeling might be totally difficult, you're gonna hang in there. You're gonna hang in. You're not giving up, not withdrawing. And this allows you to develop your loyalty and connection to others. And it's also about pacifying or taming that in ourselves that is aggressive, like the aggression we have for ourselves. And the third tool of bravery is Prajna and Upaya, wisdom. Prajna, this non-referential intelligence. So it's an intelligence that has nothing to do with your ego or your agenda. And you learn by being brave and being really honest with yourself. So you start to practice this and it just feels right. And that comes with the warmth and opening of your heart, what Uchiyama Roshi calls opening the hand of God. And also, it's also known as discriminating awareness that experiences sharpness of sense perceptions and developing psychological accuracy. And you can't develop this kind of sharpness unless you have some experience of egolessness, which is this experience of no self. Otherwise, your mind will just be occupied with ego. So can you let go of the self? And then upaya happens. The analogy is to like a bow and arrow. So prajna is the arrow, the sharpness, and upaya is the bow, the skillful means, and you need both. Thinking clarified by wisdom is always grounded in samadhi. Thinking clarified by wisdom is always grounded in samadhi. So, according to Pema, she says, a warrior accepts that we can never know what will happen next to us. We accept that. We can try to control the uncontrollable, but that's a dead end. I love what Roshi said yesterday about mindfulness of death. He says, the gift of death is joy, what in Buddhism we call the unborn or the deathless. Joy is a meeting place of deep intentionality and self-forgetting. Joy is the measure of our relationship to death, of our willingness to live with death as our ally, not our enemy. Joy is the act of giving ourselves away before we need to or are asked to, the practice of generosity. Joy is the deepest form of love, the raw engagement with the passing seasonality of existence, the last breath of a dying parent as they create a rare, beautiful frontier between loving presence and a new blossoming absence. This beautiful poem by Isa Kobayashi. So this world of dew is a world of dew, and yet. So this world of dew is a world of dew, and yet. So yes, we know that death and we know things are impermanent, and yes, we get really sad about that, touch into our hearts. In Trungpa Rinpoche's tradition, I mean, I'm going back to obstacles, what we consider to be obstacles in life. He says in his Kagyu tradition, we try to rejoice whenever there is an obstacle. I love that. We try to rejoice whenever there's an obstacle. We try to regard an obstacle as something that makes us smile, and each setback creates a further smile. We keep going in that way and we never give up. I just love that. Isn't that? Because before I read, I mean, even now I forget, but I remember I was just complaining in my mind, complaining. But then, since I read that, I can go, oh, okay, there's a complaint. Okay, I'm going to pause just a bit. It's a millisecond and smile. Okay, back to complain. But then it kind of dissipates, you know, that complaining. It doesn't get so big. You're kind of nipping it in the bud there. So I was touching on the 3 tenets of a Zen peacemaker, our practice. On the Zen Peacemaker International website, Egyoku Roshi from the Zen Center of Los Angeles wrote some beautiful things about each of the tenets, and I'm going to share those with you. So, not knowing is the first. I'll say them, you know, in an order, but it's not linear. The practice is not linear like that. So not knowing, letting go of fixed ideas about yourself, others, and the universe. She describes not knowing as a flash of openness or a sudden shift to being present in the moment. Roshi, our Roshi, calls it being in the gap. This dropping away of the things that you have relied upon for a sense of stability may lead you to examine what you believe is your center, to take refuge in the place before anything arises, a place of emptiness and profound silence, a place of the deepest rest where self-interest has not yet entered. Right, this deep openness. We don't know. We don't know how it's going to turn out. We might have some guesses, but really, can we just be in this state of not knowing? I mean, there are situations in life where we have to use our brain, and our brain is there for a reason. But a lot of things, I think we can. This is a basic tenet of our Zen peacemaker order, practicing not knowing. Right? And getting back to our self-denigration. Do we really know that we're worthless? Or is it just a habit that you've been grooving on for a long time? And you've been doing it so long, you don't even remember where it came from or how it started. Everyone has basic goodness. We're practicing on the cushions here, on the chairs. We're practicing not knowing. We're practicing opening our hearts here. We're working with bodhicitta. So it's being fearless here. This is our practice. Being fearless. Facing things as they are. Our delusions. We got a lot of them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. That's one of our vows we chant every evening, right? These are vows of the Bodhisattva, the awakened being. And then there's the second tenet, bearing witness to the joy and the suffering in the world, right? To see all aspects of the situation, bearing witness internally and the environment, your doubts. And this very practice is strengthening our ability to be aware of our feelings and thoughts so we can fully bear witness to them and be on the spot with them. So when we do that, we can have a choice in our response. And the third is taking action that arises from these first two tenets. And the underlying intention is that the action that arises is one that is caring and compassionate, that serves everyone, including you. Any questions about those three tenets? These are like basic practices here. So maybe the next time you find yourself really putting yourself down, you might go, oh, am I practicing the first tenet of a Zen peacemaker? Not knowing? Aha! Okay. And then you're bearing witness, right? Just bearing witness to your body. Oh yeah, last night, so just as I was falling asleep, I experienced some fear. And my brain didn't think I was experiencing fear. My brain was kind of tired, you know. But I noticed this familiar kind of pang in my stomach, pang or gripping in my stomach. Very subtle, but I was like, oh, I wonder, I think that's fear. And I was lying down, you know, and I thought, okay, this is the time. I have to practice with this. I have to smile with it. You know, I have to like breathe with it now. So that's what I did. I just bore witness. It wasn't comfortable, but I just laid there and I breathed. What is it? Breathed? No, I breathed with it, right? What is it? My English is sometimes not so good.
You were breathing.
I was breathing with it. Thank you, Julie. I was breathing with it. And it lasted for a little while. And so I do Reiki also. So that's just a healing energy, our own healing energy. So I just put my hands on my stomach. And then I fell asleep. And then a dream I had this morning, just before I got up, I dreamt that I was in a car with somebody else driving, and we were headed down toward a gulch and a house. And I was like, why are we going this way? You know, there's only one house here. But we went to the house, and there was a person in the house that was kind of like a zombie. And this person was becoming awake. But there were other zombies in the house or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, I was like, oh, this is uncomfortable. It wasn't my usually fear kind of like, I got to get out of here, but it was uncomfortable. I was like, okay, let's go the other way, right? Not what I've been talking about, facing fears. Here I went the other way. So it's just really very subtle and not so easy to do. This just kind of hanging out with the uncomfortableness, but that's our practice here. What is it? Getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. That's what Roshi says, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Yeah, that's a practice here. Oh yeah, a little bit about the Heart Sutra, because we've been chanting it, and today it's like, what is this, right? For Kimberly, what is this? No this, no I, no ear, no old age and death. What is this about? So this is a beautiful sutra about no self or emptiness, right? There is this in the physical or the relative realm. Yes, we have eyes, we have ears, we have old age and death, but in the absolute realm, there is no death. So it's a beautiful sutra, that teaching of the Buddha, essential teaching of the Buddha. And he's talking at the very end, about going beyond. Shikan knows all about this. They've been studying it for Commit to Sit, and those of you who've been reading along, the commentary Shikan and Shishan have been doing, right? You're going beyond. And Trungpa Rinpoche is saying in Sanskrit, this is gone beyond is the basic no, the basic no. Right, the sutra talks about no eye, no ear, no sound. And when you experience egolessness, the solidity of your life and the perceptions falls apart. And what are we doing when we are constantly having this negative self-talk? We are creating something very solid and very unhealthy for us. When really we can understand the Heart Sutra and really no ego, no self, that we can kind of see that all of these thoughts are impermanent. They're like clouds. They're not so solid. And we can start to relax a little bit. Right. Yeah, the Heart Sutra is deconstructing everything, ourselves, our world, even wisdom itself. Right? And this is a quality of Zen. Zen deconstructs itself. No wisdom and no end to wisdom. Right? This alive or dead koan that Roshi talked about, alive or dead. So Prajna, this wisdom, can cut through everything that we can get stuck on or stuck to. That's Prajna wisdom. It keeps us from fixating on anything. So wherever we get stuck, Prajna will burn it up. So there's nowhere to get stuck. So this egolessness is really, how do we experience it, right? Through this practice, this wonderful, where we can actually be still and be with ourselves. And see things as they really are, not as we think that they are. I want to end my talk with this beautiful quote by Joan Halifax that I saw. Our practice is about addressing brokenness in our lives and in the world, and to return our world and ourselves to wholeness through our imagination and through manifesting the generous attitude of a bodhisattva. An attitude that is bursting with possibilities. We need the courage to imagine a repaired and whole world, a healed and whole self, a world of possibilities based on the natural abundance that arises from not knowing and the imagination to see life as whole, totally interconnected. Any questions or comments? Tanya.
I apologize for the noise behind me. There is some facade work on my building. Anyways, about a month ago, I had a chance to see a brief presentation about Heart Sutra that was done by Japanese with some translations into English. And I think that it was actually Akiba Roshi, who is one of the most important Roshis in Japan, who said that the end of the Heart Sutra, Gate, Gate, etc., can also be translated as arrived, arrived, arrived beyond together. And I think that's really gorgeous.
That is very good. That is very
Yeah.
beautiful.
And I think it like brings back this idea of Sangha and community as
Yes,
essential. And what Kimberly said, unconditional love as something that can only truly exist in the presence of others. So I think it is just, so I now like to think about both possible endings at the same time, if I can, when the
Yes.
Heart Sutra ending goes.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. Thank you, Tanya. All right, shall we end with a hula? All righty then, I think we should get up and move our bodies a little bit. And in fact, I think I did this at the last session too, so I think Mark has done this once before. Be a pillar. Okay, that's this. I know people have done that before. Okay, we're gonna move. This is a chant that the protectors of Mauna Kea, this wonderful, huge mountain on the island of Hawaii, used as part of their protocol. They were doing it 3 times a day when they were blocking the road for access. And we saw that the KXL has been cut, pipeline, yeah, it has been. So anyway, the movement we're going to use here is some hip pelvic movement here, all right? So what you're doing actually, if you notice the back from your waist down to your tailbone, what you are doing there is you are contracting it and lengthening it. Contracting, by putting your butt out and then in. So that is the movement that begins the circular movement. If anybody has done hula hoops, this is the hula hoop movement, all right? So it's the waist down that's moving. And if you can be in touch with that contraction and lengthening in the back here, when your buttocks is in the back, it is contracted. As you start to move around, it starts to lengthen until you're right at the front where it is lengthened, and then it starts to contract again. All right, everybody, are we doing it? Okay. Okay, so to start, let's just go butt out, butt in, butt out. I know this is kind of funny, but anyway, all right. All right, we've been sitting a lot. We gotta move the hips, all right? So in and out, right? And then here we go around, going around. Good. And then you'll notice gentle knees here, okay? So we're gonna go 2 slow ones around and then 3 fast. 1, 2, 3. And keep going the same way. 1, 2 slow and 1, 2, 3. You'll notice your knees. If your knees are not bending at all, it's okay, but it helps if you actually do the knees back and forth to help push the hip around. Do you notice that? Okay, good. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1. I really like this chant. Okay, so here we go. So we're gonna do, why be a pillar? This is asking. Be a pillar is the title of it. So the first one, we're taking a step. This is left hand in the palm of the right hand and up on the right. I'm your mirror, okay? I'm your mirror here. Okay, so here, and you're gonna take a step, right and left. Okay, good. This is the mountain. Be a mountain here, okay? Be a mountain. Why be a pillar? The mountain, right? The environment. That's why. So it's saying, it's asking the question. Every time we go around, we're clapping our hands. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And then we go the mountain, the mountain. Why be a pillar? 2, 1, 2, 3. The mountain, again, the mountain. And then this is the altar. The second time we ask the altar this represents the sacred, the altar, like our altar here. Okay, yeah, the altar. So it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The altar, 1 and 2. Great. And then keep doing our amis. And then here, the rock, the pohaku, also for strength. We are being strong. We're taking a stand for what is important to us, right? Which is about non-aggression. We're taking a nonviolent stand against something. We're strong, right? We don't have to fight to prove that we're strong. We can be nonviolently strong, right? And then the last one is, why be a pillar for the people? So it's 1 and 2. Okay, 1 and 2, right. Okay, so we're taking a step. Every time we do this, we're taking a step forward. So, okay, so we're gonna do it 3 times, all right? So let's just practice. 2, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. And then the mountain. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The altar. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The pohaku, the rock. 2, 1, 2. And why be an altar? For the people, right? For our community. All right, so let's do that, and I'll do the chant here. So here we go. And he hala he kulu he mauna, the mountain. He hala he kulu he ahu, the altar. He hala he kulu he pohaku, the stone. He ahala he kulu he kanaka. He ahala he kulu he mauna. He ahala he kulu he ahu, the altar, the sacred. He ahala he kulu he pohaku, the stone, strength. He ahala he kulu he kanaka, the people. He ahala he kukulu he mauna. He ahala he kukulu he ahu, the altar. He ahala he kukulu he kahu, stone, strength. He ahala he kukulu he kanaka, for the people. And one clap to end. Okay. I guess that's all. Any questions about that chant or whatever? But it's really, you're embodying this intention here through dance, which I think is good for your body and good for the intention. Well, I'm really enjoying sesshin, and I hope you are as well. This is a deep, deep practice that is very helpful, and it is the path of love.
Prepare for lunch.